Awesome. Thank you. So welcome, everyone. It's so good to see you all this Friday. My name is Mariah Bruner. I know most of you, but there's a few here that we're seeing each other for the first time. So welcome. Thank you to Siegel for hosting these faculty wellness workshops. And particular thank you and shout out to Vicki Parrish for being my co-pilot today. She's the representative from Siegel here today. So thank you, Vicki. Real quick, before we get started, I always do a little thing at the beginning for Be Well participants. If you would like to get your 5 points for the session, either live or recorded, you can just take a screenshot or a snip or a quick photo on your cell phone, and you can load that up to My Health Check 360. That'll work just fine. We're not picky. Doesn't have to be some grand photo. Just a quick snapshot is fine. If that's really confusing, though, just send me an email, mbruner1@uca.edu. And we'll work it out offline. It's not a problem. But you'll get your 5 points. Just go ahead and submit that to your account. And this is our game plan for today. So we are going to review or recall the importance of prioritizing our mental well-being. We're going to explore Dr. Dan Siegel's Healthy Mind Platter. We're going to get a chance to assess our current mental health routine, and then have a chance to define our own healthy mind platter. So before we dive in, I do want to give a disclaimer. So I am a health educator and it is well within my scope of practice to introduce various tools and resources that will help us assess our current lifestyle and make plans for healthy changes. But that being said, I am not a licensed psychotherapist. And so my advice does not ever replace the advice that you would get from a professional mental or behavioral health counselor. So please reach out and get those services if you need them. In fact, I'm going to share some resources at the end that I think could be very helpful if you need them. So just keep that in mind. So the big question, right? So why should we prioritize our well-being? And it seems like a simple question. Usually the answer goes something like, well, it makes us feel better. Okay, well, that's true. But I think there's some layers to unpack. And we talked a little bit about this last fall, if any of you were on my faculty wellness workshops last fall. So we're just reviewing just a little bit if you were there, but if not, brand new information. American College Health Association, or the ACHA, which I utilize a lot in my work, they describe a health supporting environment as one in which stakeholders collaborate in order to expand protective risk factors, to expand protective factors and campus strengths and reduce personal, campus, and community health risk factors. So they point out every person on our campus impacts the well-being of the campus community. It takes everybody working together to create and sustain a culture of wellness. And I love this graphic that I'm showing here. I think that is a great visual for this. Investing in your personal well-being impacts you not only on the individual level, but it also helps support a campus culture of health overall. And a healthy campus overall supports student success. And that's why we're all here. And so I think this is a really important point to revisit. And again, that kind of key takeaway really is that prioritizing your mental well-being is a faculty wellness best practice. It's good for you, it's good for your colleagues, it's good for your students, and it's good for our campus environment overall. It's also important because prioritizing our mental well-being builds our resilience. And that, again, is not just on an individual level, that's on a campus level. And I don't think I probably need to talk to you about how hard the last 18 months have been. We all know that. We've got faculty all across the country, not just here at UCA, that are really struggling. We are not just in a pandemic. We are in an epidemic of overwhelm and stress. And so our mental well-being is really taking a hit. We are being stretched through anxiety, multitasking, fragmented attention, information overload. It's just been a lot, and we're tired. We're really, really tired. But that being said, it's not over, right? Unfortunately, I think the summer really underlined that point. This is not over. We never know when another surge is coming. We're going to have to ride this wave for a while. And so we needed to continue to do what we can to build our resilience, to help us withstand what has been a very difficult and traumatic experience. So I just wanted to make that point that we talked a lot about building resilience last fall and spring, but we are still very much in a time where we need to really prioritize that. And just a quick review, the APA, the American Psychological Association, defines resilience as the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress. They list a few examples. I listed them here, but I'd also like to add COVID to that list for sure. Definitely a huge source of trauma, grief, stress, etc. And then another way I like to talk about resilience is that resilience helps us weather the storms in life. I think that's a really good analogy. And it can empower us to grow and improve our life along the way as we face these difficult situations. And resilience really involves behaviors, thoughts, actions that any of us can learn and develop. And another analogy is like when we're working out to build our muscles, increasing our resilience takes time and intentional practice to build it up over time. And so, speaking of that intentional practice, we're going to talk about one tool that can be used to help build our mental well-being and therefore our resilience, and that's the Healthy Mind Platter. We'll get to that in a moment. But first, I just want to point out there's a lot of tools out there that are available to help us make a plan for wellness. I know many of you hear me talk about that a lot, that we need, for example, I talk about SMART wellness goals a whole lot. And so no matter what tool you choose, again, there's lots available. I do think that having a plan for wellness is really the most important takeaway. You need to know what you want to accomplish. You need to know how you are going to do that, when you're going to do it. You're going to have to make a plan to overcome those inevitable challenges, those barriers along the way, and then have your set ways to measure your progress, or how do you know if you've achieved success. So again, just having that, I'm going to get healthier. That's a great mindset. That's a very positive attitude, but that's not a plan. And so I think a real defined plan really helps us increase our success. So I think that, again, is just another important point that I wanted to make before we go into this tool. So the Healthy Mind Planner is one of these resources that's available out there. I think it's one of those resources that's just pretty accessible to the general public, which is why I wanted to share it with all of you today. And I do think it's really a great way to help us all build a balanced mental health routine. So first of all, we've all seen these graphics, I think, right? We've got the MyPlate that's offered by the USDA. You can go to choosemyplate.gov, and that'll help you plan out your meal and the different components. We've got Harvard here on the right with their healthy eating plate that I think is a fantastic visual for, again, just kind of looking at your plate of food and how to plan it out and make it balanced. Well, about 10 years ago, so this is nothing new, but 10 years ago, a guy named David Rock and another gentleman, Dr. Dan Siegel, they got together and they asked the question, what would be the equivalent of the recommended daily diet for a healthy mind? And just for some context, David Rock is executive director of the Neuro Leadership Institute, and that is an organization that focuses on taking a very science-based approach to leadership development. I know Dr. Hawkins is very familiar with the SCARF model for like leadership coaching and development. And I know David Rock has been doing a lot of research on that model and other things, but they're very focused on developing like soft skills and things like that in the workplace. Dr. Dan Siegel received his medical degree from Harvard, and he's a clinical professor of psychiatry at the UCLA School of Medicine. And he's the founding co-director of the Mindful Awareness Research Center at UCLA. So they both have they have a professional interest in a healthy, balanced mind. And I think the two of their varying skill sets together I really like how they came together to create this visual. So we're gonna dive in here. So they created what they call a healthy mind platter. There's lots of different ways that people in the world have represented their ideas. This is just my version of it. And you're welcome to visit their website. But they created this to describe the elements of a plan for a healthy mind. And they settled on 7 daily essential mental activities that they believe are necessary for optimum mental health. And these 7 daily activities make up the set of mental nutrients, is what they call them, which I like that your brain and relationships need to function at their best. And so they propose that by engaging every day in each of these servings of these mental nutrients, you promote integration in your life and you enable your brain to coordinate and balance its activities. And these essential mental activities not only strengthen your brain's internal connections, but they also strengthen connections with other people and the world around you. So I love that very well-rounded perspective. They are very careful to point out that there's no specific recipe for a healthy mind, but they like to encourage people that use this model to map out their day to see, how they can fit in all the nutrients they need to thrive. And like a balanced diet, there are many combinations that work. So there's no one size fits all approach. And I like that too. Dr. Siegel said it was like the idea of like, you can't eat pizza all day long and get the nutrients that you need to live. You have to find a balanced diet. So this is kind of the same approach. And again, I just like this analogy. I think it's very easy for people to understand. So we're going to dive in. I'm going to spotlight each of these 7 nutrients. So I know that Vicki and Jessica at Siegel, I think they emailed everyone a copy of the worksheet. So if you've got it handy, go ahead and print it out. I'm also going to pop a link in the chat for anybody that maybe didn't get a chance to download it. Here it is. It's coming your way. You can get to it that way as well. And then for anybody that's viewing this recorded, let me get to my slide. There we go. For anybody that's viewing this recorded, you can visit our website, uca.edu/bewell/resources. We've got a section called Resilience and Mental Health. I've got it posted there as well. So go ahead and grab that. And we're going to start on the first page. It looks like this. It's got the graphic on the top. And then it's got the 7 descriptions below it. So we're going to review each of the 7 mental activities. And as I do that, as I go through them, I'd love for you to take just a moment and jot down, kind of free form, the activities that you prefer or enjoy, already do in each of these categories. And you'll see there's that red arrow kind of shows you there's a little space after each one to jot your ideas down. So unlike some of my past presentations, this is very workshop-y. So I will be asking you to kind of interact and write things down. If you don't have a copy of the worksheet, can't print it out, that's fine. Just grab a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil, and you can just jot these down any way that you want. It does not have to be very organized. That is fine, no pressure. So the first mental activity or mental nutrient is called physical time. And this is pretty straightforward. This is time to move our bodies aerobically, if we can do that, to strengthen the brain in many ways. So just take a moment. I want you all to just jot down a few things, again, that you prefer, that you want to do, or you currently do. Whatever physical time means to you, just jot a few ideas down. We'll take just a few moments. Okay. If you don't have everything written down, that's okay. I'll give you some time here in just a minute. We're going to go to the next one. So the next one is focus time. This is our time to closely focus on tasks in a goal-oriented way, take on challenges that make deep connections in the brain. And for this one, I want to point out that this is really our time to get stuff done. So we want to remember that this is going to be probably in 2, maybe more areas of our life. It's probably going to be focus time at work, and it's going to be focus time at home. And apart from that, it also might be you need focus time for your research, or you need focus time for a new credential or a certification, something like that. So I just kind of wanted to get you down thinking along those terms. So just take a few moments and jot down a few ideas on focus time. I also should mention, if anybody is unclear about any of these categories, or if you want me to repeat some of the ideas that I share for each, you just let me know. You can unmute yourself or pop the question in the chat. I'll be watching it. Okay, I think we're going to move on to the next one. The next one is called connecting time. This is time to connect with other people, ideally in person, and when we take time to appreciate our connection to the natural world around us, so that we activate and reinforce the brain's relational circuitry. So I think this one is really interesting because it mentions specifically connecting time should be in person. And I think that one really hit home for me. Think of how much missed connecting time there's been during the pandemic. Just kind of let that sit with you. That is such a foundational part of human nature, is to connect with others in that in-person way, not on Zoom. And so just think of all that misconnecting between colleagues, among friends, families, our children's social networks. I just wanted you to kind of contemplate that as you're jotting down your ideas for connecting time, whatever that means for you. Okay, we're gonna move on to the next one. This next one, kind of fun, playtime. Time to allow ourselves to be spontaneous or creative, playfully enjoying novel experiences to help make new connections in the brain. I love this one because I think this is going to look very different for each of us. So jot down some ideas, your preferences, what you want this time for yourself to look like, or what you already do in this area. Someone mentioned in the chat that this one's tough. Yeah. In a few moments after we get through the 7, I'm going to open this up for a little dialogue. I do want to hear that feedback. That's interesting, Vicki. We'll talk about that. Okay. I know I'm moving very quickly through these. Let me check the chat. I think one more thing came up. Let's see. Yeah, Deanna, hear that. Okay, the next one is downtime. We're all great at this one, right? I'm sure. Sarcastic just a little bit. Time when we can be non-focused without any specific goal, to let our mind wander or simply relax, to help the brain recharge. And I love the little graphic here. Just that time to lay on the beach and not do anything, just kind of let our mind water, just enjoy our vacation. That's just one example, but I think it's a great representation of this one, just totally unplugging. So go ahead and write some ideas down for this one too. And I think this is probably going to be hard. So like I said, it doesn't have to be what you do now. It can be ideas for what you hope this time would be, or what you aspire for your downtime to be. That's fine. What your preferences would be. And things that you're already doing well. Okay. All right, we're going to move on to time in. This one was kind of intriguing to me when I first saw this Healthy Mind Platter model. Time in is time to quietly reflect internally, focusing on sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts to help to better integrate the brain. And a note about this one, this really should not include screen time unless it's something like using an app or a website to help you meditate. Obviously, we live in a very technology-driven world, and so sometimes that's how we facilitate our time in. So that's totally fine. But I would just say generally, kind of shutting off screens is a part of this one. So go ahead and write down your preferences, what you hope this could be for you, what it currently is, what you're doing well. Just jot your ideas down. And this is going to look different. This could be mindfulness, meditation, or something else. Prayer, journaling are another few options. A few of you are still working. I'll give you a few more moments. I hate not being able to see all of you at once and kind of scrolling through. All right. So the seventh one and the final one that we're going to spotlight, and then we'll go into some dialogue, is sleep time. Another one that maybe some of us aren't particularly great at, and some of us do well. We'll see. We'll talk about it. But time to give the brain the rest it needs to consolidate learning and recover from the experiences of the day. To jot down your ideas on this one, I mean, obviously we all understand what sleep is, but what you might want to write is, what's your ideal amount of sleep? What's your ideal like time to go to bed and time to wake up? We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a second, so it might be good to jot that down. Whether or not on the weekends you need to take a nap to help with this one is also something to consider. So anyway, just a few ideas on this one, but just take a few moments and then we'll open up for some discussion. Okay. So here's all of them all together on one slide. So it's really easy to see all the descriptions. You've also got your worksheet in front of you that has the descriptions. I would love to have a dialogue. We already had a couple comments in the chat. Anybody comfortable unmuting or putting in the chat? I would love for you to unmute. I'd love for this to be interactive. What categories were like, yeah, I got this. I've got really good ideas and I'm doing this really well. Or what were the categories that you were like, oh, I don't do any of this? I'm really curious to see if any themes develop, particularly around faculty life. I wonder if really one of you thinks that maybe, or a few of you think that maybe faculty in particular do better at certain categories than others. I would just love, coming from the staff side, I'm always very interested in the faculty perspective. So feel free to unmute yourself and share.
I was going to say, I just saw Chanel put this on there, but my worst thing is the sleep. And I think ever since the pandemic, I live by myself. And so I was totally isolated from everything. And I still don't feel great and comfortable about going into big places yet, especially if people don't have masks on. And so I guess I need some help on suggestions of how to get my brain to stop and be able to go to sleep at night and stay asleep.
Yeah. Yeah, that's tough. Yeah, I saw Chanel mention that in the chat as well. Let me go back up here.
I think for me, sleeping, I do really well. My son goes to sleep at 7 o'clock and he doesn't wake up till 4 a.m. And so I used to try and stay up and say, let me get stuff done. But now if he goes to bed at 7 o'clock, I'm asleep by 7:05. And so it's, do not, in my family, people know if it's not an emergency, do not make my phone make any kind of noise because we are enjoying the rest. But one area that I actually just started yesterday on making more time for is physical time. I used to love to work out and do stuff. And then, after having a kid, it's like, oh my God, I don't really know my body anymore. So I don't really know what it can do. And so I was looking for something, that I could do that was, really chill. And so I actually went for a swim in the Hyper Center. And I said, I'm just going to do 2 laps. I really can't tell you how long I was in the pool, but I definitely enjoyed it. And I said, this is what I'll do every day is that, I'll go for a swim.
I love that. And I hear you as a mother to 2 young children. I hear you on physical time has to change after you have kids. Just your routine is totally disrupted. What you can do can change. So I hear all of that, but good for you for getting out there and trying the swimming. That is great. Love the Hyper. They are great.
Yes. Yeah, sleep time is challenging for me too. And the reason is because I can't turn it off. So it's like I'm going and I'm going and I'm going. I normally go to bed around in between 10 and 11 at night, but I don't think I fall asleep until like 1 because I just can't, shut the day off.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's probably something that we all can relate to, and at least in some way. Let me look at the chat. Thank you, Carmita. That was great. I
really struggle with physical time as well. Like I don't leave enough time for myself. I know that it's something that I really need to do. It's something that I really enjoy doing, but with kids as well. And I just can't, I don't know. I know if I just walk, if I just go to the Hyper, I have all these resources, but I cannot make myself do it. Like I can come up with a million reasons of other work things I have to do to get done. And it affects my sleep. I know it does. I can, I do well with 8 hours of sleep a night, but I have the same problem where I have a hard time. Actually, for me, winding down is okay because I have this sort of meditative thing I do thinking about gardening and my garden, and it helps me fall asleep. But then I have a really hard time staying asleep and actually having good quality of sleep for the period of time that I am in bed. I don't know what it is. I think if I added physical activity, it would help. But
Yeah.
like I've known forever I need to do this, but I just don't know how to get myself to do it.
Candace,
Yeah.
I'm there with you. I don't know how to like give time to myself. I struggle with that so much. I give so much to everybody else, and then I'm just exhausted. So I'm just like, okay, well, whatever. I'll just do nothing for myself. It's a constant struggle for me.
Yeah.
You hit it on the head.
Candace, I really like that you talked about the connection between a lot of these categories, right? Because there's total interplay going on. Yeah. Like if you don't get that physical time, your sleep time is impacted. And, all these other areas can be impacted. If you don't get your sleep time, then you can't focus as much. So, it really, you're starting to see, I think the point I'm trying to make is like coming up with the balance that works for you and really sitting down and thinking about how you can get just enough of these areas. I mean, again, you're not going to be able to probably be perfect in any of these areas. And I'm going to make that point at the end. This is not about perfection, but maybe starting with those areas that are really lacking and trying to plan for improvement would make a world of difference. And we're going to get to that in a second. Let me check the chat. Anybody else can chime in too. This has been great discussion.
And I think also, I take advantage of a lot of these pillars that you have because, we're empty nesters for the most part. So all my children are well, they're grown. And so, so I really don't have to, worry about them, that much. It's just my husband and I. But I think I take advantage of the fact that, I can work as long as I want, or I can sleep and go to bed or wake up when I want to. I can do the downtime because I really don't, have any obligation as far as children are concerned. So I think I take advantage of a lot of it and of the time that I have, but I don't manage that time wisely.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a good perspective. I've wondered that myself. Like, what is my life going to look like in the future when I don't have young children at the house? Like, that is just going to be, it's going to be so different. And how is my healthy mind platter going to change? It's going to look totally different. Open up new doors, I think, for sure, or just different doors. Elizabeth said that she struggles with time in, having kids doesn't leave much time for me time. Yes, for sure. Connecting time is hard. Just moved, so it limits the in-person aspect. Yep. We talked about sleep. Downtime, cannot seem to relax. Yep. Yeah. Juggling impacts focus time, feeling like you're doing a lot of things, but not doing any of them particularly well. Yes. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. You've got the quantity, but maybe not the quality that you'd like. Yeah. So I'm just scrolling through. I don't want to miss anything. These are really good.
One thing I'm noticing, there's two particular areas that stuck out to me in this that I'm like, ooh, well, I really struggle with that. And my two are playtime and time in. But when I was looking at them, I realized they're both spontaneous, and that's not me. I'm spontaneous with my kids because they are spontaneous and I have to be spontaneous with them, but it stresses me out, right? So spontaneity is not really a sweet spot for me. So I think that's part of the issue with those two for me, but I definitely need more of both of those.
Yeah. Well, I think that kind of leads into the idea, or just highlights the idea that all of us are going to need different amounts of these areas. So if you need less playtime, that's fine. I mean, there's no right answer to this. It really what works best for you, what makes you feel successful with your day, what makes you feel fulfilled, what makes you feel like you've just kind of got things under control, allows you to take that deep breath. I fully expected a lot of parents on this call for the playtime activities to include like time with the kids, because I do think that's where a lot of our playtime happens in that season of life. And that's kind of natural. I think that's totally fine. But finding that time to do playtime for yourself is, for some people, something they don't do and that they should. But yeah, I think parents are gonna have interesting answers for that one. Sandy, that's a good tip in the chat. She said, try bundling something you don't like if you don't like to exercise, maybe combine that with something you do enjoy, like listening to an audiobook. Yeah, I like that tip. Okay, well, good. So we are going to move on to the next part. And that looks, where'd my mouse go? Hold on, there we go. So it looks like this. So it's on the second page. And it says at the top, what percentage of time do you currently spend in each of these areas? On a typical busy day is the way I like to start it out. You could do this with, different days each week, but we'll just look at the typical busy day. Now, there's a lot of different ways to do this, y'all. It does not have to be scientific. If you don't like percentages, if you are math averse, then don't worry about that. You can just draw like a pie chart or a little graph, and you can separate it that way, but just kind of sketch out your day. Percentages are fine, by the way. I've got them listed here, and you can kind of figure out, okay, if I sleep 8 hours a day out of my 20 hours in each day, how many, or 24 hours in each day, how much percentage is that, and go from there. Or you can take out percentages and just do hours, hours of the day, whatever works for you. This does not have to be exact. This just helps us get to thinking about, okay, really, what does my day currently look like? So I'm going to let us work on this for just a couple of minutes. If you're watching this on the recording, feel free to fast forward. I'll try to wave so that you know when to stop. So go ahead and sketch out your typical busy day with these 7 areas.
So I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
When I'm thinking about my day, I've got a lot of things that don't fit in these categories.
Okay.
So do I just put those in a different category? Because I'm thinking house cleaning and driving kids all over town. Like, I don't think any of those fit under these great mindfulness things.
So good question. I would say anything that has to get done, like on your to-do list, go ahead and put that in focus time. For this purpose, let's just dump it in that category, if that makes sense. I know that maybe driving your kids around town is not like the most deep mental activity of your life, but it's something that you have to do. So let's put it in there for now. And then this next part that we're going to get into, we can kind of separate that a little bit. Okay. I know this is kind of awkward to do a workshop on Zoom, so it probably, to me, it feels like I'm letting y'all sit forever and ever. But let's explore. If anybody is kind of willing to share after you've mapped out sort of your typical day, anything surprise you, good or bad? You're pleasantly surprised, or surprised that it was worse than you thought, or how's this looking once you actually break it down into these 7 mental activities? What are your thoughts? Someone says it seems they're missing 19% of the day in their calculations. Yes, that's why if you're math adverse, you might just want to do a pie chart or something like that to visualize it a different way.
I actually brought mine up on Excel because I like numbers in excruciating detail.
There you go. Oh yeah. Yeah. You can really go to town on this. That's what I mean. Like you can get really, really mathematical, or you can just do it as a visualization. Carmita, I see your question in the chat. I'll make a note to email you some information afterwards.
All right, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody want to share? It's okay if you don't.
I did the numbers and I was feeling bad about that. So I said, I'm gonna put it on a pie chart. So I did a pie chart. And at first I'm like, oh, that's woefully low on all of the, most of those categories fit into about that much of my circle, right? But then when I looked, I was like, but I don't know that it's necessarily bad that I've got so much focus time and sleep time either. Like I have to have life, and that's what focus time is life. It's getting the things done. So you can't discount, like I caught myself like, oh, this is terrible. I was like, no, that's actually probably okay. Anyhow, that was my observation.
Yeah. When I built this worksheet, I wanted to make sure it made sense. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go through this with myself. And the way I started it was building in my sleep time first, because I was like, okay, I have to sleep every day. Obviously, I could probably do a little bit better in that area, but that's kind of where I started and then built around that. But like sleep time is pretty foundational. Our action items are our focus time, the things that we have to do. Anybody else?
That's kind of what I did. I did my sleep time first and then my focus time, because I'm at work. I mean, that's kind of most of my focus is work, and then home cooking and getting kids ready for bed and things like that, which that pretty much takes up most of my days, sleep and focus. So it leaves very little time for physical or time in, or even playtime and downtime. So yeah, that pretty much shakes up my day. I mean, my focus time was 42% of my 100%. So yeah, no fun. My life is no fun.
I'm seeing a lot of people like nodding and agreeing with you in the room here. So I think you're right on. Anybody else? Surprises?
I remember whenever my daughter was still at home, somebody asked me one time, what do you do for fun? And I looked at them and went sideways and went, I'm a single mother. I don't have time for fun.
I know it's a little depressing. Like I have 3 toddlers at home and a 10-year-old. And so I'm a little sad for them, because this is depressing to me.
One of the things that I noticed, so several years ago, I got sick, and the solution was I had to work out and I had to sleep. So, I mean, there's 11 hours of my day right there, and there's no choice. And so, for me, I'm like, oh, I'm doing pretty good because I'm getting that in. And then I'm looking at these lists. I'm like, wait, that means I lost. What I hadn't realized was I lost the time in and that connecting time. And then when I was working through the focus time, focus time would be 12 hours of the day. But within that, when I'm driving kids across town, I get to, at the same time, do connecting time with the kids because they're older. And because they're older, I can actually get a workout in because I can leave them at home alone for an hour. It's phenomenal. But then when they're in the car, they actually can have real conversations, not the toddler conversation that drains me, but actually like back and forth. My kids will ask, Mom, you look like you're kind of tired today. What happened? And So I'm like, you know what? It's not as bad as I thought because I'm multitasking. I'm focusing and connecting. Now, if I can find time for my husband, that'd be the win. But we'll take one or the other.
Yeah, I love that. Finding ways to combine a little bit. I mean, and that again, this is not an exact science really at all, right? I mean, some of these are going to overlap. They're going to blend just because we have only a certain number of hours in the day. Some days are going to have a little bit less of this and some days are going to have a little bit more. So yeah, I love that you pointed that out. Creative ways to sneak it in. Absolutely essential for sure. Okay, so now that we've had time to sort of sketch out what our day looks like now, we are going to move on to the next section, which is, it looks like this. It's at the bottom of that second page. So this is the point where we're going to define our healthy mind platter. Now, I don't expect us to get through all of this on this call. Okay, we're just going to kind of talk it out a little bit, kind of get you started, and then you can finish it offline. But just to review, there's no specific recipe, but it is helpful to map it out. We've already talked about that. Like a balanced diet, there's many combinations that work well. But this is kind of what I think is helpful. So what are the things that you need to accomplish? What are the things that you want to do? So not just the need, but the want. Kind of ask yourself, okay, with the needs and the wants, really, when it comes down to it, how am I going to feel successful today? What do I need to do to make this day at the end when my head's hitting the pillow? I'm like, all right, this was a good day. I got it done and I feel good and I feel fulfilled. So kind of keep those in your head and then start building this out. So I would suggest start by building in your wake up time and your bedtime. So I think that helps. And with those two, I would suggest to put a time. Like, again, we want to plan as specifically as we can. So at that wake up time, right, whatever that is, 6 a.m., 5 a.m., however crazy you want to get. And then your ideal bedtime. So write down that. Take a look at your calendars and your schedule. And then you would write down everything that you already have scheduled. The things that are booked, those are on your schedule for that day. You can't get out of them. You got to do it. And that may or may not be your focus time. We already talked about that. That might overlap. It just depends on you. I mean, because for some people, you've got to go to work. That's 8 hours at least. You've got to take care of your household needs, your chores, your kids, whatever. But then maybe some additional focus time might be that you're working on a really big project right now for your research that's kind of apart from your normal job duties, or you're working on that credential that you've been trying to finish, your PhD, whatever it is. So that might be some additional focus time. So add those in, make sure you got all your essential action items in there, and then build in those other things that you need. There's so many different ways to do this. When I was looking at it for myself, I thought I really liked the idea of the wake up time and the bedtime, but my lunch times and my dinner times, they vary a little bit depending on the day. I have kids again, so sometimes our dinner times fluctuate a little bit. So what I liked though was these blocks of time. So I know I have to do these things between my wake up time and my lunch time. I have to do these things between my lunchtime and my dinner time. And then I do have to do these last things between dinner time and bedtime. Does that make sense? So you can very detailed go out line by line, hour by hour, 15-minute increments, however detailed you want to. But like, that's just, for me, that's not realistic. I like those kind of chunks of time. So I wanted to kind of throw that out there as an option too. So again, you don't have to finish this right now. I just wanted to make sure you kind of understood the flow of how this works. And I've got a few other slides I want to share, but are there any questions? I don't want to leave you with any questions before we move on. Okay, great. Okay, so a few reminders. And this top one is actually a quote from Dr. Siegel, one of the creators of the Healthy Mind Platter. So he said, the point is to become aware of the full spectrum of essential mental activities And as with essential nutrients, make sure that at least every day we are bringing the right ingredients into our mental diet, even if for just a bit of time. I just really like that as kind of a final thought from the creators of this. There is no one size fits all approach. You'll hear me say that a lot in all of our Be Well stuff. We cannot compare ourselves to others. We cannot compare ourselves to the way we were when we were young men and women. we just can't. Our bodies have changed. Our commitments have changed. Perfection is not the goal for sure as well. We have to remember that. That's just not it. Improvement, I think, should be the goal, whatever that means to you. And then our needs may vary at different times of the year. And just thinking about the academic calendar and how things kind of ebb and flow for us. There are going to be times during that year for us that we're going to have more time for that downtime, for that playtime, for that, just kind of free time, the time where we don't have to focus on so many things. And then we're going to have to plan for those times a year that are busier and more challenging to do this. And then over time, so not just kind of our schedule wise, but just life wise, it's going to change. Our needs are going to change over time. So again, our needs now are not going to be the same needs that we're going to need in 5 or 10 years down the road. And we already touched on this. Some of us who are talking about being parents, our needs are going to change over time. Our availability and our time of days, or in our pockets of time throughout the day are going to change. Some of us are going to start caring for older parents, here now or in the near future or in a few years. So just our commitments are going to change over time. And what we need to feel fulfilled is going to change too. So we might be all about the downtime and the playtime now, but in the future, that might be more time in. It changes. Mine has changed, and I know it's going to change more. And then it's okay to ask for help. So it's always a great idea to seek assistance from a licensed counselor as you need it. I mentioned that at the beginning that, my advice does not replace that advice that you can get from a mental health professional. So please seek that out. And I've got some resources I just wanted to close with, because I do think these are very, very important to point out anytime we talk about mental well-being on our campus. So we have our employee assistance program, which offers short-term counseling and mental health support for all benefits eligible employees and their spouses and dependents. This is at no cost to you and the people that live with you in your household. You can visit with them here in Conway or in Little Rock in person, get that in-person connection that we talked about. But it's okay, we're all busy. If you just need to make a phone call or do a video conference visit, they have that option too. And there's more information here on our website. We have definitely seen an uptick during the pandemic. And I think that's good news. It sounds kind of weird to say that, but it's good news to hear that our employees are utilizing that assistance when they need it. And then this is not a slide that I've shared before, but it's something that I've been putting together because I do think it's important to share. If you don't want to use EAP and you want to use another local provider, we have very good mental health coverage with our insurance plan. So if you're on UC's health plan, especially for the point of service plan, our outpatient mental health services with an in-network provider. So you always want to check before you go, but you pay your $20 copay and then the rest is covered at 100%. So I think that's a message I would really like to get out across campus. If you are a supervisor and you have an employee that maybe asks you about this, it's here. But just a disclaimer, this is 2021 coverage. Our new year starts in January. I'll have to review our summary plan document for our coverage then, but right now this is our coverage for the rest of the 2021 insurance year. Okay. And that, I've got some references here. I will share these slides out with Vicki so that you have access to them. We've got links to the websites for David Rock and Dr. Dan Siegel. And then this is my contact information. So if you have any questions, we had a very robust discussion about different resources. I owe some of you some emails, so I'll do that. But any closing questions or comments? Oh, Catherine said she loved this. Thanks so much, Catherine. I'm glad you were here. All right. I'm going to stop share in case anybody wants to actually, I feel like that way I can see you.